Welcome to the optical communication course. We see here the Erbium dope optical amplifier. So it has a active medium length of 10 to 30 meter long, and that Erbium dope material that is used, and that material is called as a rare earth element, and that rare earth element which is lightly doped in this mechanism there. And if you see that rare earth elements are erbium, then yttrium, thulium, and praseodymium. So these are the rare earth elements that are used. And then for the amplification, a host fiber material can be a silica, can be a fluoride based glass, can be a telluride glass. Now this optical amplifier will work in a operating region of this device that will be depending upon that a host material and the doping element. So for a long distance communication, a silica fiber and erbium is used. So that's why we can say that combination of a silica and erbium, we say that a erbium dope a fiber amplifier. So here we can say that silica and erbium. In some other cases, that yttrium can be used to increase the pumping efficiency so that we'll get that a higher gain of the optical amplifier. But in the if you compare that a semiconductor optical amplifier and this iridium dope fiber amplifier, so semiconductor optical amplifier can be useful for this from this narrow band to the ultra band there. But in the case of erbium dope optical amplifier, it will be operate from the 1530 to 1565 nanometer region. In that region, if you see that is about a limited region that erbium dope optical amplifier is used, and generally that iridium dope fiber amplifier that operates in a spectral band, and that spectral band we can say that can be termed as a C band, or we can say that a conversion band. So now we can use a various combinations of this rare earth element and this fiber, and then we can increase the band of operation of this iridium dope fiber amplifier that can be operate in the S band, or it can be operate in the L band there. So we say that if for this amplifier it has a active medium, and through that optical medium that amplification of this optical signal takes place, and we consider that a silica and erbium. So we should know that what are the energy level structure of that erbium. So generally that erbium atoms in the silica are Er 3 plus ions, and that are nothing but the erbium atoms that have the three outer electrons. Okay, we can say that it has a three outer electrons. Now here that three outer electron that will describe that how your amplification takes place, means that electron will move from this ground state to the higher energy state, and that process of raising the ion to the higher energy level, and that is just like we can say that a pumping of this electron there. So we'll see that how that electrons are raising the, or that ions are raising to the higher energy levels. So we can consider that a simplified energy level diagram of the transition process of this erbium ions, that we can say that here we can say that a ground state, and this one is about a energy, and we have the a pump transition. We can have the pump band. We can say that this one is about a pump transition. So specifically pump transition is to be takes place at a 980 nanometer of a wavelength, and this one is about your ground state. Here you can say that we have the a photons of energy, they are raising from the ground state to the higher energy state. So another state it has a metastable state. Like this one is about a metastable state or metastable level. So initially, if we see that we have the a pump level, this is about a pump transition. So that is about a pump at this 980 nanometer. So another pump transition takes place at 1480 nanometer. Means we say that here we have a two pump levels. Okay, one pump level is at 980 nanometer and another pump level is at 1480 nanometer. That is about the two pump level. And then we can consider that a state that is about a metastable state or a metastable level. Here we have that all the electron atom are referred to that particular energy level, and when that electrons will reach to that particular energy level, then we can say that that will start a amplification of your that we can say that a stimulated emission takes place. Okay, means we can say that amplification of your optical signals takes place. So now the same pumping and that energy level that we have seen earlier in the laser there. Now this we can say that a different levels there. We can say that a spontaneous emission. Then again another level we can say that stimulated emission, and then we can say that stimulated emission. Now these are all are operating at the different region here. So we can say that 15, 50 nanometer, 1550 nanometer. That's why we have said that it will work at this particular region only. That's why you can say that it's here the example we are just showing that it will operate at this 1550 nanometer, and then it will provide the stimulated emission. Okay, so likewise there are, if you see that here, that's about a ground state, and we have the a pump band. Now this pump band and ground state, if you see that there is a comparison of this energy state level at this some particular energy level. This we have the metastable level, energy level, and that operating wavelength for this pump band, it is about a 980 nanometer. Then we have the a metastable state, and that metastable state is separated from this particular ground state by an 0.841 electron volt. We can say that 0.841 electron volt, that is energy correspond to what we can say that a 1480 nanometer wavelength, that is about a 1480 nanometer wavelength, and that is about a, we can say that a top level of this metastable, and then a bottom level of this metastable state, it is separated by this ground state with a 0.841 electron volt, and then this energy correspond to that a 1530 or a 1550 nanometer. Okay, likewise, so this we can say that that is corresponding energy state is about a 1530 to the 1565. So means we have this a metastable state, different metastable state, and that different metastable state they have different energy level and they have the different wavelength there. So how this optical amplifier work? Generally we say that there are the two operations. One operation we supposed to be consider that a pumping operation takes place at this 980 nanometer. Means we can say that a pump will emit the photons at a 980 nanometer there, and that pumping that will excite the ion from the ground state to the pump level. Here we can say that ground level to the pump level, and then that excited ions that will be very quickly decay from this pump state to this another state here. So we can say that here is we can say that from that pump band to this particular band, or you can say that that excited ions from this ground state to the pump band, they will quickly decay, or they will decay very quickly at this metastable level. Okay, that is about, you can say that from this pump band to this metastable band, and during this decay, the whatever the excess energy is there, that excess energy will be released as a photon, and then at this particular metastable band, the electrons of that excited ions that will populate at this lower end band, and then they will produce, or that particular band have the of that particular photon, means because we can say that they will move to this metastable state. So then electron excited electrons of that excited ions, they will populate to the lower band, means that is about a lower band, so that's why they will provide the photons of energy. So another band is about what we can say that a pump band is about a 1480 nanometer. So in this case, what happened at a 1480 nanometer? So pump photon at a 1480 nanometer. So now because of uh, that 1480 nanometer, the absorption of that 14 nanometer photon excite an electron from the ground state to the metastable state. Okay, that is about this is about a metastable state is nothing but we say it is about a populated state because of that pumping at a 1480 nanometer. So that ions present at this erbium ion present at this ground state that will be excited to the metastable state, and then this electron will move down again to the lower end of this metastable state. This is about a upper metastable state. This is about a lower end of this metastable state. So you can say that at this particular transition, if supposed to be electron reaches here, so then it will be down to this lower band. Okay, likewise, we can say that they will be reached to this lower band of this metastable state. So that is because when we pump the electron there, and then that electron will tend to move to the lower band of this metastable state. So some of the ion that will be present in that particular metastable state, again they can further decay there, and because of that decay back to the ground level there. So that is nothing but a decaying that electron, those are present in that metastable state, that will back to this a ground state here in the absence of an any external stimulated photon of a flux, and that is nothing but a transition of this metastable state from this a ground state there, and that decaying of this photon from this higher energy state to this lower energy state, it is called as a spontaneous emission, and that spontaneous emission will add a noise to this amplifier there. Okay, so then another case we have the two more transition there. So we have this energy correspond to this particular ground state. Right now we can say that it is reaches to the ground state there. Then photon those have the energies, or that photon have the band gap of energy between this metastable state and this the ground state. So in that case, small portion of that external photon will absorb by these ions in the ground state, and then they will raise the ions to the metastable state. So means we can say that a raising of this ions to this metastable state means from this ground state to this a metastable state, and that is called as we can say that a stimulated absorption of what, sorry here it is about a absorption, stimulated absorption. That is about the process, we can say that is about a stimulated absorption. They will get the energy and they will reach to this higher energy state. There is about a spontaneous emission, stimulated absorption, and when they reach to this higher band, then that electron move down to this what we can say that decaying again, means we have that absorb energy raised to the metastable state, and then is then they will move decay down to the again to the ground state, and that is about we can say that a stimulated emission. So means a signal, whatever we can say that a photon that will trigger that excited ion, and that will drop down to this a lower ground state there, and because of that a emission of that electron takes place, or we can say that in because of that dropping down that from this higher energy state to the lower energy state, it will generate the new photon of the same energy. We have the emission, we it will generate the new photon of the same energy. So that's why that is about the amplification is takes place. So now that is about, we say that here the stimulated emission and the amplification of that photon will be takes place. Here the multiplication is takes place. And if you see that the width of that metastable state and the ground state, that will allow that stimulation emission process, and that will be occur in the range of what we can say that the 1530 nanometer to 1565 nanometer. So here in this case, absorption and emission is takes place, and that absorption and emission, it is depending upon that what type of a host material and what type of a dopant is used in the a glass, and that according to that we can say that, so that erbium dope a fiber amplifier will work at that particular band of a operation there. So that is about that is about a transition process of this erbium dope optical amplifier. So erbium dope optical amplifier, if you see that it is depending upon that a dope fiber, or we can say that it will be depend upon that what will be the pumping mechanism you use, and that pumping mechanism is used at a, whether it will be one pump or a more pump, and it is depending upon that what will be the coupler or a coupling mechanism used for this particular optical fiber. You can say that a coupler, and again what type of a isolator we are going to be used in the design, and we can consider that what type of a tap couplers we are using. So now we see here a simple diagram of that erbium dope amplifier on a configuration of EDFA. In this configuration, if you see that we have that a signal in, then we supposed to be consider that a tap here, and then we supposed to be use that optical isolator OI, with only one way communication is to be takes place one direction, that light is propagating there. Then we have that wavelength switching circuit, because we supposed to be a pump the pump laser here, and this is about a pumping action takes place, and then this is about your erbium dope optical amplifier. That is about a EDFA. This is just a erbium dope fiber amplifier. Okay, that is about a fiber amplifier here. Then a optical isolator. Then we have the tap. Then we'll get that a signal out, signal in, and a signal out. So it's about a signal in here. Then we have the optical isolator. Generally it is to be used because light should not be reached to this input signal, all the, it will not disturb your mechanism. Even here we have used the optical isolator, so it will not disturb the mechanism of this EDFA. So that's why the optical isolator is used. It will propagate the light only in the one direction, in the forward direction. So that tap couplers that are used for just considering that tapping that particular wavelength or particular signal to be propagating through this optical amplifier, fiber amplifier here. And we can consider that the optical isolator just it will prevent that signal reflecting from any other mechanism will not reach to this device at this device or to this EDFA amplifier. If supposed to be that signal back come back to this devices, then that device will not work properly, or there may be some amplifier noise, or we can say that it will decrease the amplifier efficiency. So that is about we can say here a optical isolator. Then we can consider that a pump source. A pump light is just like it is injected the direction where we are injecting that a signal, that is about a pump light as well as this signal light. So we can say that both are in the same direction, that is called as a co-directional pumping it takes place. Again we can say that it can be pumped through the opposite direction also, just like in another example, if supposed to be I am just going to draw the another example there, we can consider that this way we can pumping here takes place there. Another direction there. So that's why we can say that the pumping action takes place, and then at the end we are using this optical isolator there again, and then this fiber will this is about nothing but a active medium we are supposed to be considered. This amplification takes place here, and then we'll get that a signal out. So because of that particular pumping or a perfect pumping, that will produces a less noise, and it will give a larger population inversion at the specific operating wavelength there. So this is about the one configuration. We can say that a co-directional pumping means both the direction your signal in as well as the pumping in. So that's why it is about a co-directional pumping. So another example is about we can say that is about a signal tap here, signal in. Okay, we can say that a signal in here. Then we have the tap. This is about a tap. Then a optical isolator. Then we can say that we have the EDFA here. Then wavelength switching circuit. Then we can say that a pump laser. Then pumping it takes place in this direction. Okay, so this is nothing but a EDFA, and then we'll get the output. Again, we use the optical isolator. Then a tap here. Then we'll get that a signal out here. Similarly, this is about we can say that a counter directional pumping. Now different direction. So this is about a counter directional pumping. So then another pumping, we can say that a signal in here, signal in. Then this one is about we can say a tap, then a optical isolator, Then we have wavelength switching circuit. So wavelength switching circuit will be useful for the specific wavelength. Okay, so it will be work for the specific wavelength. Pump laser here, and this one is about your pumping. Then this is about your iridium dope fiber amplifier. Then another pumping, we can say that. Have the pump here. Then we supposed to be use the pumping. Okay, that is about, we can say that, a pump laser. Then we'll get a output the one direction to optical. Then we are using the tap, and then a signal out. So in this case, if you see that both the pumpings are used, that is a counter direction, as well as we can say that a co-directional. So it's about a wavelength selecting coupler or wavelength selecting device. Only specific it will work for the specific wavelength. You can say that this is about a dual pumping. Okay, so means both the way pumping is takes place in co-directional as well as a counter directional. So that will be useful to increase the gain of the amplifier. So generally, if you consider that, if what are the specific pumping at what particular frequency it is to be used. So generally, we can say that from the Erbium dope optical amplifier, the preferred optical pumping is at a 980 nanometer, and that 980 nanometer that will produce a low noise and it achieve a larger population inversion than this 1480 nanometer because the gap is very small. Okay, so it is excited to the higher level. That's why 980 nanometer pumping is mostly used instead of a 1480 nanometer pumping. Then the gain of this erbium dope optical amplifier is nothing but what will be the signal out and what will be the signal in. And if you compare that gain with respect to the wavelength, it is depending upon that what will be the pump in and what will be the, we can say that, what will be the wavelength of this signal in and what will be the wavelength of this particular pump in. And if you consider that a quantum conversion efficiency of this erbium dope optical amplifier, it is a wavelength dependent. So that is about a PCE. PCE is nothing but a power conversion efficiency, and that PCE power conversion efficiency is nothing but what, PS out by minus PS in by PP in. So approximately it is based on this lambda p by lambda s, or it is less than the 1 here. That is about the power conversion efficiency. It is just like a ratio of this a wavelength, and we say that the gain, it is again depending upon that what will be the power output and what will be the power in, what will the wavelength of this pump source as well as the what we are saying that it is about the source here. So this one is about what we can say that a signal pump and again of this iridium dope optical amplifier. So now next optical amplifier. So now the same principle we supposed to be say that it is to be used in the Raman amplifier. But only the fact is that in the Raman amplifier, it is just like a non-linear effect. That non-linear effect that we have seen that in a stimulated Raman scattering, and that stimulated Raman scattering is occur in the optical fiber at a high optical power. Okay, that's why it's called as a Raman amplifier. So if you see that the Raman amplifier, so here we supposed to be use a Raman pump. This one is about relative amplitude, and then at this particular, this is about, we can say that at this is nothing but a peak, that we can say that signals at 1035 nanometers. Here, this one is about what we can say that SRS, that is about a stimulated Raman scattering. SRS, generated interference signal at 1535 nanometer. And this is nothing but a, this one is about SRS. Okay, so we can draw in a different way here. And this is nothing but a, we can say that is about a signal now. This is nothing but a data signal at 1535 nanometer. This one is about, we can say, a gain peak here, and it has a peak Stokes shift 90 nanometer. Sorry, gain Stokes shifts at a 19 nanometer. This we can say that a pump, Raman pump, that is at a 1445 nanometer. So 1445 nanometer plus 90, that is about a 1535. That is about, that's why you can say that is about a peak Stokes here. So now we know that a stimulated Raman scattering, that effect is occur when we have that optical energy is high, optical power is high, and because of that optical high power, so there will be a vibration mode occur in that particular lattice structure of the optical fiber material. So that's why that signal gets scattered in that optical fiber. So that is called as a stimulated Raman scattering. So now here the same principle we can say that, this one we can say that we have the atom first absorbs a photon at a particular energy, and they will release the another photon at a lower energy, that is at a longer wavelength than that at the absorbed photon. Now this can say that a 1445 nanometer, that is about the pump energy, and here we can say that that will be shift, that a difference of this particular wavelength at that absorb and a release one is a different here. So energy difference between that a absorb photon and that release photon is transformed into the phonon, and that is in the range of what, 80 to 100 nanometer. We can say that 80 to 100 nanometer, that is about the range of this energy release from this absorb and that release photon, that is called as a phonon. So in this case here, in the a Raman amplifier, we say we are saying that this is nothing but a shift to the particular longer wavelength, and that shift from one wavelength to the another wavelength, it is called as a Stokes shift. And that shift of this particular wavelength, okay, means it's just like we can say that a shift for the wavelength. Means here we can say that a pump at this 1445 nanometer and shift is at this particular peak is at 1535 nanometer. And that a shift to a particular wavelength, that is called as a Stokes shift. And that Stokes shift is for the wavelength here. So here in this figure, if you see that a Raman pump, we say that it is at the 1445 nanometer, and means we can say that a laser is operating at this 1445 nanometer, and then we can say that because of that stimulated Raman scattering, that will be at a 1535 nanometer, and that because of that stimulated Raman scattering occur at that 1535 nanometer, that will transfer their power to the signal at the 1535 nanometer. Means we can say that the signal is just like amplified because of that SRA transfer their power to the signal at this 1535 nanometer. Just like it is at the 19, that is about at peak at what we can say that again of peak is about at 1435 nanometer, that is peak away from this Raman pump, that will be at a 1445 nanometer. So now that's why we can say that here that Raman amplifier will work at a specific stimulated Raman scattering that will occur at that particular wavelength. So if you consider that a EDFA, so in that EDFA, it will transfer that, we can say that a pump transition at this 980 nanometer. But in the case of a Raman amplifier, it will work at this 1445 nanometer and with a peak stroke of peak stroke shift at a 19 nanometer. So that is about your Raman amplifier, and that amplification takes place due to this stimulated Raman scattering in this Raman amplifier. So there are the various amplifiers that are work or that are used, and that can be useful for this scattering there. So we'll see that a one diagram or typical Raman amplification takes place at a different wavelength using that different pump source there. We supposed to be say that there is an input here, then we can say that a tap power, we say here it is about the input. This one is about a transition is to takes place, or we can say that is about a fiber here. This one is about, we can say, WDM coupler, wavelength division multiplexing coupler, or we can say that a broadband WDM's coupler. Then we have this gain flattening filter, GFF, and then this is about a tap. We can say that's about a tap, and we'll get that a output. If we say that input is about a likewise, so output will be amplified likewise. Okay, that's about the amplification. And here we require a pumping. Pumping is takes place. Here we are a combiner, pump to pump combiner, because at a different wavelength it will be operating. So that's why it will combine the different pumping source. That is about lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda 3. You can say it is about a lambda 4. So this is about, we can say, a pump combiner. So this is about a Raman amplifier. This is a simple sample Raman amplifier. It will work, and that will be using this different wavelength here. So here, if we consider that, here we have the a combiner, and that combining the different wavelength signal, and then it will produce that combiner to this a single fiber there. So that's why we can say that it will work at this 14xx pump. So at different wavelengths. That's why 14xx pump, we can say that. And then it will combine using this fuse technique of fuse fiber couple technology. So it will combine here. This one is about a WDM coupler. This we can say that is about a power, or we can say that a pump power. Okay, that is to this device. And then combined power is coupled into the transmission fiber, as that will be counter propagating direction through a wideband WDM coupler, and then we will get that a amplified output. Then we are using that a gain flattening filter that is used to equalize the gains at the different wavelength. So we can see that because of this pumping, so we'll get that a high output or high output, and because of this particular pumping, so we will get that at that particular wavelength, so we'll get that a higher output. So that is about, we can say that, a Raman amplifier, and we shall stop here for this Raman amplifier, and we'll continue in the next lecture here.